You never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice. A quote by Bob Marley. It isn't always easy to find the light at the end of a dark path, but when you do, it's blinding. Kind of like turning on the light after being in the dark. You immediately squint your eyes. In the blur of the moment, things become unrecognizable. But when your eyes adapt to the light, everything becomes normal. We as humans go through the same process when we're in a dark place in our life. We struggle to find the light at the end of the tunnel, but when we do, we emerge with an understanding that life must go on. But although life goes on, we never forget the dark.
November 3rd, 1995. The world would make way for Tamacia Tyler. She would be born in the state of Georgia, where she would have her upbringing in the southeast Atlanta area. The area she would be raised in would be Thomasville Heights. From early on, Tamacia is described as someone with a bright smile, someone who is generous, someone with a great sense of humor, a goofy person, someone who could undoubtedly place a smile upon your face. By the time Tamacia was in her teenage years, she would be attending Booker T. Washington High School, where she ran track. She enjoyed being on social media. She loved chocolate, and she was a person who wore her emotions on her sleeve. She was the type of person who wasn't afraid to tell you about yourself either. She was blunt and straight to the point. These attributes are what made Tamacia the great person she was. And with a great personality, people tended to gravitate towards her. While Tamacia was in her junior year of high school, she would meet someone, a guy who goes by the name of Roy, and a relationship would blossom and carry on through their senior year. By the year of 2014, she would put on her cap and gown and officially graduate from high school. After high school, she would continue her education at Middle Georgia State University. By the year of 2016, everything was going right for Tamacia. She had a great family support system. She had loving friends. But she also had that boyfriend from high school. But it would be the year of 2016, would be the year that they officially tie the knot. Tamacia Tyler would become Tamacia Wilder. At that time, her boyfriend, but now husband, was in the military, and they were accustomed to moving around. In 2016, Tamacia would transition from Georgia to North Carolina. While in North Carolina, she loved it at first, but when you're away from family and friends, things tend to get difficult. So every chance she got, she would go back home to the Atlanta area to visit them. In late 2017, Tamacia Wilder and her husband would be in for a great surprise. That would be when she would find out that she was expecting a child, and their family was about to get just a little bit bigger. In the year of 2018, the couple would welcome their son, Roy Jr., who at his arrival would immediately capture their hearts. With the father being in the military, Roy would quickly become the man at the house, even though he was a child. Whenever your spouse is in the military, you just have to be accustomed to them being away. They may be stationed in another place for a while, or you may be moved from city to city. But at that time, Tamacia and her husband were making it work. By the year of 2020, Tamacia and her husband would have to pick up and move again. They would transition to Yuma, Arizona. When Tamacia had moved to Arizona, she quickly drew in friends. She did have a social circle. Her main gripe was that Arizona was a hot place. She even threatened to cut off her hair. just to make things a little cooler. Although Yuma, Arizona was a place that she wasn't accustomed to and outside her normal formal living, she made it work. But it would be while in Arizona that things would take a turn in the relationship with her husband. By late 2020, the honeymoon was over. The distance in the relationship began to play a big role. Her husband was often stationed in other places while she was in Arizona. And by the beginning of 2021, things would take a drastic turn. Her and her then husband would decide to separate. By the year of 2021, Tamacia Wilder would be 25 years old. Their son Roy Jr. would be 2 years old. And although things tend to change in life, life goes on, right? And in the month of May, Tamacia would meet someone. A guy who goes by the name of Trayvon Wilhite. Trayvon was kind of like her husband. He had a military background, but he was also experiencing the same thing that she was experiencing. He was also coming out of a marriage that had failed. Having that in common, when Tamacia met Trayvon, things seemed okay, but things would begin to move rather quickly. Shortly after beginning dating, Tamacia Wilder and her 2-year-old son would choose to move in with Trayvon Wilhite. The family describes Trayvon as a guy they didn't know much about, but whenever Tamacia would call home and speak to family, she seemed okay. She would tell her family, "I'm happy. I'm all right." But things weren't okay. Something was about to happen that would take everyone for a surprise. August 23rd, 2021. Approximately 4:24 a.m. Authorities would be dispatched to 100 South Magnolia Avenue, located in Yuma, Arizona. When the authorities arrived on the scene, they were under the impression that someone was going to harm themselves. That someone was 28-year-old Trayvon Wilhite. But when they arrived on the scene, the investigators got more than they bargained for. Upon entering the scene, they would find Trayvon, but they would also find something else. Inside of the home, they would find 2 deceased victims. At first glance, the investigators could see that it was a child and a woman. Those people would be identified as 25-year-old Tamacia Wilder and 2-year-old Roy Jr. Discovering this, Trayvon White would immediately be detained and transported to headquarters for further questioning. While Trayvon was on his way to the station, the scene was being further investigated. They would comb the scene and look for clues. It became clear that whatever transpired in that home was very devastating. By early morning of August 24th, the neighbors would be awakened to flashing lights and sirens, and they would get a glimpse of the gurneys carrying out the victims. When the neighbors were questioned, they told the authorities it's eerie. They didn't hear anything. And looking from the outside in, nothing seemed off. They described them as your normal couple with children in the home. Everything seemed normal. But staring at a crime scene, they quickly realized it wasn't.
Following the death of 25-year-old Tamacia Wilder and her 2-year-old son, Roy Wilder Jr., the family is speaking out. Speaking for the first time since the murder of a mother and child, the family of Tamacia Wilder remember her as someone who always brightened their day.
My daughter was so beautiful. She was so silly.
Tamicia's son, Roy Jr., also brought joy into any room he entered, something he was just learning to express.
He was everything. He wasn't a talker, but he had just finally started like communicating with me over the phone. So he would only give me the kisses. Oh my God. He was only 2.
Tamacia and her son moved to Yuma about a year ago, after her then-husband was stationed at MCAS Yuma. But her mother says Tamacia began living with the suspect, Trayvon Wilhite, after she separated from her husband. Police say Wilhite was at the scene Tuesday, at their home on Magnolia Avenue, when they arrived.
The victims would be transported to the coroner's office for an autopsy. And during this autopsy, they would come to find that the cause of death for both victims was blunt force trauma, which made this crime all the more personal. After the authorities had investigated the scene, it became clear that Trayvon was 100% the culprit. But when speaking with investigators, he would immediately lawyer up and wouldn't offer any information as to why this happened. So he would quickly receive his court date, at least for pretrial. But at the beginning of his trial, his attorney would immediately try and stretch this out. First, his attorney would ask for 30 more days for preparation. And then when they returned to court, he would ask for a mental evaluation. That mental evaluation would be granted. It became clear that Trayvon and his attorney were beginning to play a dirty game, but they would be in for a rude awakening, because they would come to find out that the prosecution was seeking the ultimate penalty. So, instead of taking it to trial, Trayvon Wilhite would decide to plead guilty to 2 counts of murder in exchange for his life, where he would formally be sentenced to life in prison.
Before I pronounce sentence, I want to express my sincere condolences to the family and friends and loved ones of the victims in this case.
The family of Tamacia and Roy were present in the courtroom, sharing emotional but happy memories about their loved ones. Tamacia's mother says she was full of joy, always with a smile on her face, and that it has been extremely difficult for the entire family to get through losing her daughter and grandson. They say now that Wilhite is behind bars for life, they finally have some closure.
It's ordered that you will serve life imprisonment, a natural life term. It's ordered that those 2 counts will be served consecutively, one with another.
2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally late in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way. I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere, ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
Say cheese. Say cheese.
Although justice has been served, this case left a big why hovering above it. There's no clear motive in this case, whether there was an argument that night or whether Trayvon just snapped. But on that night, 25-year-old Tamacia Wilder and her 2-year-old son lost their life. This guy took it. A man whom himself had his own children. Justice was served, but there's still a lot of mystery surrounding this case. I truly hope the family receives the answers one day. Rest in peace, Tamacia Wilder and Roy Jr. Thank you for being a light for others.